And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the original mothership at coalitionradio.us. I'll just ask this at the beginning of the show, folks, if this is the first time, maybe the second or third time you've listened to programming on this network, we have a simple request. If you could follow us, like us, subscribe to us, all the usual places. I'm even proud to announce, and fortunately I neither sang nor danced in this, well, the Coalition is actually on TikTok now. We did our first TikTok at the Coalition Radio. Be very afraid. All right. I may accompany our next one with interpretive dance. But this is the third in a series of shows, and we're gonna work this until Don Grevian cries uncle, where we are addressing the report of an organization called Community United for Positive Change, and a report issued in collaboration with the city of Pawtucket. So tonight, it's sort of a rotating cast. First of all, congratulations to JL. He got married this weekend, and so all blessings to him and his bride as they celebrate that momentous occasion. I've just recently gotten to know him, and I continue to be impressed by his work at multiple levels, both in the business community and also in support of the Cape Verdean community. Christine Bento, of course, a life force, if you will, in the city of Pawtucket, representing not just the CV community, as they say, but really all folks who face a variety of challenges that life seems to throw at all of us, and some more so than others, and advocates tirelessly for regular folks in the community on behalf of the Pawtucket, if you will, power structure, with a special emphasis and a special familiarity with the members of the Pawtucket law enforcement community. And I say that with love and admiration. Lynn Farinelli, who is also intimately involved in the type of advocacy that Christine, if you will, brings to the fore in the city of Pawtucket, and she is also a member of the Rhode Island Accountability Project. And of course, Jim Katos, Dimitri Lysikatos, the other member, the partner, if you will, in the Rhode Island Accountability Project, who I just want to say this, and I think I told him this as an aside. I was at a meeting, if you will, a conference call with National Libertarians, and they were pointing out that, well, it's a shame we can't have this sort of shared resource where we could oversee police misbehavior and shenanigans. And then a few days later, I was at the State House where a state rep, as part of a speech, said, boy, there should be a resource where accountability should be demanded on behalf of the police. And I said, you folks, you don't know what's going on here in Pawtucket. Folks have it together. Folks have put together a number of years of work into creating just such a resource for towns across Rhode Island, facing the winds of political change, the winds of the legal system being weaponized against them. And despite that all, and despite the best efforts of Pawtucket government and Rhode Island government, have managed to still provide that type of resource for the community. I think, as I've done this over a number of years, I think what I'm most impressed with by folks in the Pawtucket community is their staying power. There's, what's that old line? There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying left in advocacy and activism. And this group just day after day after day, it's a lot of people get hot and bothered about issues. A lot of people will do a couple of good things in behalf of their community. And then for some reason, the energy dissipates, the outrage dissipates, and people move on. And I'm not faulting those people. That happens. It's part of life. But when you run into a group of people who have really dedicated a big part of their life, it's a central part of their day, to advocating on behalf of people that aren't their immediate family, they may know only casually, that's impressive. And I wanted to take this moment in this whole process to applaud your ongoing efforts over a significant period of time, because I understand the the sweat and the work and the time away from family. And, you know, I understand how good it could feel when you have the win, but I also know exactly what it feels like when you just, they just won't give in. So let's take this moment to sort of reflect on, revel in the successes, enjoy those moments of success when you're able to make affirmative changes in people's lives, because they don't come often enough. And you all have superpowers, but even people with superpowers need to recharge them a little while. So my hat's off to you with this effort and your willingness to engage day after day after day. So welcome back. And I think what we wanted to pick up was, and by the way, the report is up on the coalition. Just do a search for Pawtucket-based community united for positive change. And we'll continue to share that every time we share the recording of this show. But let's circle back, as they say, in the big DC press conferences and go to the report. And Christine, I think you wanted to talk about, in the past show, we had some folks on from Providence who, were advocating for similar issues. And you wanted to touch base on a couple of the ongoing cases that folks in the community are screaming for resolution on. So why don't you take it from here?
Yes, I was listening a little bit to your past show, the one that was just on, and great conversations. Everyone sounds like they're saying the same thing. We're all on the same page. The only thing that I wanted to add to that too is that Pawtucket is very unique because when other cities are trying to prevent things from happening, or police shootings and police killings, we're trying to here in Pawtucket, we're trying to prevent it from happening again and again and again, and having the police stage it so that it can come out justified. That's the problem we're dealing with here. I have all the respect for everyone, yelling and screaming and protesting about, anything that's happening. We're all going through it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island is the smallest state, right? And we have it happening right here in Pawtucket, actually happening. But we can yell out names of actual victims from our city that police get away with doing it over and over again and then staging it. So, um, I guess the difference here in Pawtucket is that, the state reps care, congressmen care, the all the legislation and the politicians, they all care, right? And people care. Everyone cares. We're all in this small state of Rhode Island, yet nobody has the balls, should I say, to take a look at Pawtucket and say it's happening over there more than usual. So maybe the problem could be this too, where it's happening so much in Pawtucket and they have so much power to get away with it that other cities might start to say, "Hey, look what they're getting away with over there in Pawtucket." It's going to start spilling out into other communities if we don't open our eyes and realize how many times it's happened here in Pawtucket. We're not trying to prevent it only from happening. We're trying to prevent it from happening again and again, and it's always the same outcome. It's always the victim or the person who dies that was the bad guy in the picture, and these police will stage it. It's the only word I can. They'll stage it to make it look that way. They'll be the first ones to come out and say it was justified. I'll use our public safety director in the Dominic Silver case. He was in a whole other state in Florida. He was able to make a judgment call or damage what the community was going to think of the victim who died in that case, right? Because within a few hours of it happening, he put out a statement that the victim pointed a gun at the officer not once, but twice. And that story stuck. I mean, if you look at the report now, and you try to like anyone with any type of sense tries to picture what he said versus what the report states, will see that it doesn't add up. So the mayor's right. There are discrepancies in his police department's report, not in our report, because our report is reflective of their report. But we can't be lying unless they're lying first, the way I see it. So I want to say thank you to you. I want to thank Go Local for finally, for once, instead of just letting the city point us out as liars, in these discrepancies that they can no longer answer for, to hold the mayor responsible for his words. He's the mayor. You cannot be the mayor of a city and defame citizens and taxpayers' character because you feel like it. You have to be held accountable for your words. I'm asking everyone to hold Don Grebian responsible for his words, like they hold us responsible. They're
Right.
always asking me for my proof and my receipts. I want to see his. Where are the discrepancies? If not in your report, not ours.
I get it. I get you. Jim, what are your thoughts?
It's getting a little bit tiring hearing him
Yeah.
just blurt out the
Yeah.
word liar, and everybody just falls for it.
I read the report that Miss Lynn Farinelli got through the APRA process, the actual investigation into the shooting of Dominique Silva. And I mean, there were glaring inconsistencies with what I heard coming from Mr. Pyrus's statements. My question is did the grand jury see that report, or did the grand jury get the information that was put out in that report, or did they get a revised version from the city of Pawtucket? Because I find it very hard to believe that as a grand jury member that you could find the officer, you know, not guilty of shooting him in the back after reading that report. We know at that time the Attorney General was Peter Kilmartin. We know Peter Kilmartin was a member of the Pawtucket Police Department. We also know that Mr. Pyre's daughter, I guess he was the safety. What was he at? What was his position there?
Public safety director.
Christine.
Plus, he was the
Public safety
he was
director,
the city
right?
Administrator for two, so he held two positions.
Two positions, right? His daughter was the liaison for the Attorney General's office. There's a lot of incestuous relationships, in this whole story, and I find it very hard to believe that the grand jury got the information that I read in that actual report. I mean, we can go into some of the details, I guess. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
From what I understand, the city of Pawtucket said that the gun was found by Dominique Silva's side. That's incorrect, is it not? That gun was found in the street. That gun had already been thrown, or the BB gun, I should say. We know it wasn't a real firearm. So that gun had already left the victim's hand prior to being shot. And I guess the police officer who marked it as evidence moved it from the street. And where did he move it? Back to the body of Dominique Silva. Why would you do something like that? There are a lot of inconsistent statements from the city of Pawtucket. I just want to see this whole thing cleared up, and I want to see what evidence the grand jury got. I think that'll be the telltale sign. But that'll tell the story.
Right. The threat was no longer there. She knew that. But she continued with her story and whatever the public safety director said from Florida. I mean, within hours, the public safety director, Tony Pyrus, deemed the shooting justified. How does he do that? I thought that was the job of the grand jury.
That's the go-to story anyways, isn't it? It's always justified until proven otherwise. I mean, this is the MO of law enforcement. They will never, ever, ever admit a fault until you prove it a fault. I mean, this is just the way the system works.
Proven guilty, It's innocent until proven guilty, supposedly for us.
Guilty until proven
Until it's
innocent
involving
on
a
our
police,
end.
until it involves a police shooting, and then you're really
Right.
that's when the system really works. You're innocent until proven guilty. Well, that's pretty, interesting.
I'm going to jump in here just really quick.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
I actually saw, I read the autopsy, and there is absolutely no way she was in fear for her life by shooting this boy in his back. He was running from her. He had already thrown the BB gun, and she shot him multiple times in his back. She was not in fear for her life at all. I just want to say that.
I mean, think about it this way. I'm going to look at it from just a regular, citizen's point of view. I had a, have a little street in me, so, and anybody will understand that if I have a BB gun, I know mine is a BB gun. I know that officer has a real one. I'm running away from that officer. It does make more sense that I'm going to throw it so that she can see I'm no longer armed with anything, probably to save my life as I run away from her for fear of my life, not the other way around. Would it make sense that if I know I'm holding on to a BB gun, that I would point it at a person with a real gun? If you can help me make sense of that, I would appreciate it, but I doubt that anyone can.
Well, I think your story rings true because aren't there witness statements that also say that?
Right. And I mean,
Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong.
Coming out.
The original report,
Yes.
the police report has witness statements that say something very similar to that. Is that
Yes,
correct, Lynn?
that's
Through
true.
it,
That is
so that he
absolutely,
gets rid of
absolutely,
whatever
100%.
fear she was feeling, and when did she see it? When did she know he was armed?
I believe the witness statement, correct me if I'm wrong again, Lynn, said that he had already thrown the gun.
Exactly.
Which is in conflict with her version of the story.
Right.
And this is the exact problem that
is
we're
it her
dealing with.
version or was it Tony's version? And she had to go along with it because if the public safety director gave a version, you have to go along with that version. What does she look like changing it?
Well, real quick, if I believe I'm correct again, a law enforcement officer doesn't have to give their side of the story. I believe is it 24 hours? So basically, the police department can gather all the evidence, can gather all the witnesses, can get all the stories that they have, and then the officer gives their statement. So they're not forced to give a statement immediately. The police department will interview the witnesses, they'll interview the other police officers, everybody there, and then lastly she gives her story. So this is a problem in itself because it will allow you to create a story to fit whatever agenda you'd like it to fit according to whatever statements have been made already. So that's
Exactly.
a problem in itself. I believe, they give them like a cool down period, I believe, after the shooting, which is problematic because it allows for, this type of corruption to take place.
Her statement was the next day.
The next day, yeah, 24 hours, I believe, something like that. Yep.
Is this the normal MO for the Pawtucket Police Department?
Absolutely. And they'll
The 24-hour deal?
because they continue to get away with it.
I mean, have there been any successful, if you will, prosecutions, of Pawtucket Police in the lifetime that all of you folks have spent there?
I think there was a civil case.
On that.
I think there was a civil case. What case was that, Lynn, where the gentleman got shot in Pawtucket? It was ruled justified, but I think in a civil case they were found guilty.
That was Jason Swift, I believe.
Swift, yes, correct.
But see, Pawtucket has gotten pretty smart, because they've lost cases before, or the truth, and the truth will come out eventually. They've gotten smart by using, the city solicitor. Now just hold on to the police report and don't release it to the families. So the families cannot settle it or find out exactly what happened, long enough to, he holds it on long enough to prevent a lawsuit, which is what he attempted to do in the Dominic Silva case. And I'll also let Lynn elaborate more on that, all the hoops she had to go through to get the report for the family, because he refused to release it to the family so they can hire an attorney and find out what really happened. So they're getting very, 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 slick with how they move.
Pat, if you can imagine, Frank Milos will not release a police report if no one was arrested. Well, there was no chance to arrest Dominique Silva because they killed him. So that's where he stood by the fact that he wasn't going to release the police report to me. And I did have to go to the Attorney General's office. And it took over a year, and I finally got the entire report. But Frank Milos gets a lot of violations with the Attorney General's office. And it's kind of ironic that at the end of every violation, it says that they don't find him willful. It's not a willful or intentional violation. But if you look on the Attorney General's website and you see all the violations that he gets, how can it not be willful and reckless? Or, he definitely withholds a lot of information that can be released. And he just chooses not to because it will, shine a really bad light on the Pawtucket Police Department.
And despite this constant pattern, there's no follow-up. There's no, what happens to this person?
Well, and that's why I started off the way that I did, right? Other cities will probably, hopefully won't stop mimicking Pawtucket, right? If they keep watching Pawtucket, it's going to start happening elsewhere because Pawtucket gets away with it. No one's paying attention. The politicians, state police don't get involved. The AG's offices just brushes off whatever Frank Milos is doing. It's pretty obvious what's happening here in Pawtucket, but everybody's kind of ignoring it. And as long as we continue to ignore the level of corruption that's happening here in Pawtucket, what's to stop other cities from just start killing people because, no one's going to pay attention anyway. And how does that make us feel? I'm not worried for my community or the young black and brown children of the city going out and only just being harassed by police. I'm afraid of them getting killed by police. And once again, it becoming their fault because the police decides to stage however they want to present it to make the rest of the community fall for the shenanigans. And then once the city falls for it, the community falls for it, the mayor pretends to fall for it. And then the AG's office just brushes it off like, yeah, we're not going to look too much into this. We're paying them to do a job. Do it. Why do we have to point this out to you that Pawtucket's a problem? Why doesn't anybody in the state notice this by now? Do they notice it and ignore it? And the longer they ignore it, how do we fix it? So stop fixing Pawtucket and watch how everybody else can fall into line. We've got a chief who ignores everything. We gave the chief and the mayor months and months and months of our time, because we don't get paid to sit with them. They get paid to sit with us, right?
Right.
Just to come out of this months later with no answers, because you got to go check with Frank Milos. Look who they're checking with, Frank Milos. And I'm not trying to even be professional about them anymore, because at the end of the day, Frank Milos is the man who told Lynn Farinelli they're not going to get very far hanging with the likes of that one. What does that even mean? He's talking about me. So
Right.
if we have a city solicitor who talks like that and thinks like that, I have no respect for him. He hasn't earned it, and he never will talking like that. The likes of me, the likes of what? A person that won't shut up when you tell the brown girl to shut up. This brown girl ain't going nowhere, and I'm not getting any quieter. I'm only getting louder.
Hmm.
I wish I was on last week when you asked what motivates people. What motivates me is that I'm not going to be intimidated to be quiet. They keep on trying. The mayor keeps calling me a liar every chance he gets. Is it working out for him? No. Maybe he should call Dr. Phil and figure out how he's going to get me to be quiet. And that's not even going to help. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm only going to get louder. And I've already expressed this to you and several other media outlets. I'm prepared, much more than he is, to help him stick his foot in his mouth if he doesn't knock it off. Because I have video, I have audio of the mayor saying some things that goes along with what I'm saying, agreeing with what I'm saying. And then what? I don't have to call him a liar. I don't have to justify what I'm saying. I can actually just release some of that and let everyone else see for themselves and hear for themselves that he talks both ways. He'll say what he has to say to please the community, and then he'll go back and side with the police. And I'm going to go so far as to say he helps the police target those like us who speak up against the city. The retaliation in the city is real. It's actually the same way that I've learned to live as a brown girl with a big mouth who won't be quiet when they say so. I've learned to live with the retaliation. And, you know, it's such a norm here in Pawtucket. It's crazy. In other cities in Providence, especially in Providence, the conversation you were just having earlier, a lot of people were saying, well, the mayor says this, and you were saying how the governor says this, and everyone chimes in and says something. When do you ever hear the mayor of our city saying anything? He doesn't work with us. He won't. He doesn't have to. Why? Because he's got the whole state backing up his police department to do whatever they want. Why should they have to put out any press conferences and talk to us? The chief can be silent and invisible all she wants. At the end of the day, no one's paying attention to what Pawtucket's doing, which is why they're going to keep doing it. And I'm going to keep talking.
Yeah.
Where do we go from
the
here?
problem is systemic. I mean, I have a small story about Frank Milos. I remember early on in my activism in Pawtucket, I was requesting internal affairs reports, and I had some people who had informed me that they had filed complaint. So when I asked for a batch of reports, and I noticed that the complaints that these people had put in were not in the batch that I had requested, and the batch I had requested had a certain time frame, and the time frame fit the frame that these people had put complaints in. So I confronted Frank Milos and I said, you're missing some reports. So he went back to IA and basically confronted IA and said, the Rhode Island Accountability Project says there are some reports missing. IA decided to give him another report or two. I got them. I noticed there were still reports missing. Went back again. Told him, Frank, there are still reports missing. He went back to IA. They mysteriously found another one. They're pulling them out of the woodwork, right? I mean, when I confronted him, I said, Frank, at some point, you have to understand that these people are lying to you, and that you have to understand that they're lying to you, and you're going along with it. You're being part of the conspiracy. If you don't see that there's a problem here, you should be going to the Attorney General saying you don't have faith in the IA department to do their job. I'm requesting reports, and there's missing reports constantly. Why don't you go to the Attorney General, report your own IA division, and have an investigation done? He told me that his fiduciary duty is to the city of Pawtucket Incorporated, not to the people of Pawtucket. So this just goes to show you how deep the systemic problem is. He's basically a lawyer that covers up for the police department. His duty isn't to the people. His duty is to the police department, the mayor, the city. And whatever it takes to keep the city, the mayor from being sued or any kind of damage control, he'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
He has no scruples.
So, literally, you've got to sue him to do his job.
Yes. That's what we've been going through with the Rhode Island Accountability Project. The report that Lynn got basically had to go through a year of AG. And let me go back to that report. That report was very important because it opened up the door for other cities and towns and other police and other residents to get the shooting investigations that come from their police departments. I mean, this stuff you weren't getting these reports prior to Lynn getting this. This was stuff that they'd always come up with some APRA exemption on, and the AG would always rule in favor of it. I think, at this point, I don't know whether Nerona at this point just saw something in that report that he couldn't live with. I don't know why he decided to release it at that point and open the door for these records to become public. I think it's probably the only good ruling I've seen him make in quite a while.
You think his hands were tied?
That was interesting to find out. Lynn, can you help me explain this because you understand it better than I do? When it comes to the trust that handles the lawsuits for police department, I believe in most of Rhode Island. There's an interesting thing that happens in Pawtucket. They've been sued so many times that something's different about how Pawtucket claims get paid. Because they've been sued so many times, the trust no longer pays up to a certain amount. Jim, Lynn, can you guys explain how that works? I don't really know completely.
Yeah, Lynn would be better at that.
Yeah, they actually told me that the deductible for Pawtucket is the highest that they have, and they cover all of Rhode Island. So Pawtucket has to pay the first $300,000. And I think that Warwick only has to pay like $30,000, and Pawtucket has to pay the first $300,000 because they're sued so many times over their police department.
Wow.
And nobody.
Now I do want to open. I do want to open something else up. It's been a while, but the FOP president, he is no longer the FOP guy for Pawtucket. He's now in East Providence, but he actually had a Massachusetts group, and they're bloggers and they're on YouTube and everything. He actually had them come to spend time at the Pawtucket Police substation. He invited them, and shortly after that, they put out a video, and then they started attacking Christine and myself. And I actually have an IA investigation that clearly proves that he invited them in order, because they reached out to him and they wanted to do, I guess, a story on what was going on in the city of Pawtucket. And Christine and I were targeted. And I actually had these people coming to my house. And my husband's cell phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And they were calling his phone. And it all goes back to the retaliation. So this FOP president decided that he was going to have, these people come. And there was a video of that visit that they had with the Pawtucket police at the substation. And ironically, a month ago, that video all of a sudden became corrupt. And now they no longer have it. And the reason it's kind of interesting is because the city of Pawtucket just got a violation on another video So they had to release a different video to me. And around that same time, the video from the substation all of a sudden got corrupt, and now they can't release that one to me. So when we're talking about Milos and we're talking about the Pawtucket Police Department, there's a Major Kane. I guess he does the internet, the files or whatever. He's saying that the file is corrupt, but it's just ironic. Huh? We know it's not corrupt.
I said, I think he's the one that's corrupt.
Yeah. So when you look at it and you're saying, well, is there retaliation? Absolutely. There were people outside my home. There were people calling my husband's phone. They did an article on myself and on Christine. And actually that FOP president, he calls me the fatter, uglier, Michael Moore. Michael Moore's fatter, uglier sister. That's what it is, right, Jim? So, but when you look at it, it's the people that have the voices that get the retaliation. But all we want is change. All we want is accountability. We want transparency. And we don't want to see the kids, and I'm showing my age, but we don't want to see these kids shot by the police on our streets in Pawtucket. That's what we don't want to see. And, there's a lot of things that they could be transparent about, like how many police officers actually live in the city of Pawtucket. It took us months to finally get a percentage. We have what, 10%, Christine? 10% live in Pawtucket. That's what they say. So, but you can't find out how many minority police officers we have. We really have not a lot of information about these police officers that our taxes are paying for them to retaliate against us, for them to shoot us in the streets, and that's all I have to say, actually. But, it goes back. There really isn't. And Frank Milos, actually, when he wanted to let me know that file was corrupt, he actually had Major Kane, I guess he's Major Kane, I don't know, in his office to back him up that the file is corrupt. And it's almost like Frank didn't believe it either, but he wanted somebody else to tell me. So it's crazy. It's crazy, the things that happen in Pawtucket. And as far as your report, now, Pat, you have not received anything from Pawtucket to say what is factual in that report?
No.
That you have?
No. I'm looking for it right now. I received a letter back, and give me a moment where I find this. And we published it last week. Radio silence, the worst part. But I want to read this. We'll do a dramatic reading with with interpretive dance, as I like to say. Let's see if we can pull this up.
Words matter. And when words are coming out of the mayor's mouth, he needs to watch what he said. He cannot just blur out whatever he wants and not be held accountable. It's very simple. I mean, I don't even know why it's so hard at this point. If the mayor says that something in our document is not factual, it's very simple. He's got a whole staff of people that were taking notes during our meetings. Find where it's unfactual.
Let me read off. Let me just see if I can get this right. So I questioned to them what, in fact, was the fallacy here. What was the inaccuracy? So they first responded to me, "Thank you for continuing to look into this, and I wanted to make sure I responded to your call from earlier. The city is always working to foster a closer and stronger community. Pawtucket is a diverse community where the residents truly care about one another. We have seen that through the outreach and support during the COVID-19 pandemic and coming together amidst horrific acts such as the murder of George Floyd. After the conclusion of the Chauvin trial, we see that justice was served, and the city of Pawtucket continues to encourage and work with its residents to strive for equity and equality to honor the memory of George Floyd. While the city and members of law enforcement participated in a series of meetings to collaborate with CU4PC and Reflect, the city the city was also working with many other individual residents and organizations to make sure that everyone was given the opportunity to be engaged in the community. The discussions conducted with all collaborates gave an opportunity for the groups, individuals, and city to recognize and understand each other's role and perspective. From those discussions with various community groups, members, and the city was able to make some, in other words, they didn't answer the question. They just say all the wonderful things they've done. And, and I respond to them. I don't believe you answered my question. Here's a quote from a Go Local Proud piece. Pawtucket Mayor Donald Grebian, despite being listed as a collaborator in the report, claims, however, that it contains factual inaccuracies. I asked, what specific inaccuracies are you referring to? Regards. Thank you for the follow-up, Pat. As mentioned, the city has shared with CU4PC the matrix of what we understand to be the takeaways on the many meetings and are looking forward with action rather than go back and forth on takeaways. We look forward to working together and engaging with our residents through the Mayor's Community Board. At that point, I kind of gave up because it was clear that they weren't going to, if you will, acknowledge the fact that they were the ones who cited the inaccuracies. I mean,
Right. And I believe Melissa pointed one of the inaccuracies out last week. She was being very polite about it. Maybe the inaccuracies, maybe he's a little bit confused. Maybe he thought the inaccuracies were with us. But if I can remember, one of the major inaccuracies that we had where the mayor threw a fit and actually left was when he tried to say that the union president, Bano, who's no longer the union president, would not visit the idea of putting names back on the badges because of something that was on my Facebook. My Facebook shouldn't stop you from doing your job. And when the mayor mentioned that, well, the mayor agreed that the names should be put on badges, so he agreed with us. The chief agreed that the names should be put on badges. He agreed with us. It would make it easier for her to recognize the rookies faster, right? They both agreed with us that the name badges should be changed back to the names. That was made very clear. So the inaccuracy comes in when the mayor decides, after I posted something on my Facebook, that the FOP president, James Bano, was the one who did not want to meet and was not going to entertain the idea of changing the badges back to the name. Well, during this meeting, Melissa received a text message as the mayor was suggesting that James Bano doesn't want to meet. Melissa was receiving a text message from James Bano himself, suggesting that he's been wanting to meet. He wouldn't mind speaking to us, but he's not being invited by the city to come into the meeting. So maybe the mayor should answer why he blamed Bano. Now Bano's no longer there. Bano went somewhere else. He's no longer the FOP president. Whose fault is it now that we still do not have name badges? So was it the mayor not entertaining the thought, but lying to us saying that he was all for it? That's a discrepancy. I would like him to clarify that. Don't worry about my discrepancies. He has enough of them he can clear up.
Can I chime in on this real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When Melissa talked about this a couple of weeks ago, she said James was upset that you published, which we published on the Rhode Island Accountability Project Facebook page, the names and badge numbers of the Pawtucket police officers, which came from a public records request, which is public information. I don't understand what James Bano is all upset about. He's throwing a temper tantrum over public information. If he's okay with looking at putting the names back on the uniforms, then he shouldn't have a problem with the names and badge numbers being put online. It's the same thing. You're just basically identifying the badge number. What? I don't understand what the issue is. It's like,
all I did was
it seems
I
to me
sped
like
up
he
the
just made
process
that up.
because they were taking too long.
Well,
It's
it's not
all
just
part
that. I
of the
mean, we just
secrecy,
we
though.
just yeah, we just put up a list, basically, of the Pawtucket police officers and their badge numbers. I mean, it'd be great if they had them on their uniforms, because I mean, the list doesn't really mean anything. I don't know what he was upset over. I think it was just an excuse for him to walk away from the table. I think maybe, he bit off more than he could chew and didn't want to go along with the process and use that as an excuse. It's ridiculous. It's already public information.
The bizarre part of these conversations, you'll ask them a question and they'll answer a completely different question, then won't acknowledge. This is bizarre. And how long? How many years has this been going on for?
We have Officer James Bano, who made it to FOP president. So one would think he's a very bright person. I guess I don't look at titles because I'm a little bit confused by it all. Who will like unshamefully suggest that we are somehow looking for officers' addresses because we want to go to their house and do what? There's so many narrow-minded, simple-minded people in our community that will come onto our posts and repeat those exact words because if the FOP president said it, it must be true. I'm so tired of reading it. I no longer even entertain it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need their addresses to go pay them a visit. If we wanted their addresses, they're online. I mean, I've got many friends who are officers throughout Rhode Island. Everyone's address is online. Mine's, yours, theirs. We're not looking for addresses because we want to go knock on their door. I can care less about visiting Bano. Can't stand the guy, and he can't stand me. But he can come knock on my door, right? Because he's an officer. He wears a badge. He can come knock on my door. That's crazy, though. But it's the truth. But these people who are so narrow-minded that I can't even entertain anymore, suggesting that, well, you guys just want their addresses because you want to go to their house. And do what?
They manipulated.
I don't understand.
They manipulated that request.
They don't want to wear a name badge.
The request for the cities and towns the police officers live in, they manipulated that whole thing into police officers' addresses when it was never even that. It was originally supposed to be part of a statistical analysis to find out which police officers live in the community and how those particular police officers interact with the community, whether they volunteer their time as football coaches and whatnot, as compared to officers who live outside of the community. And without knowing which officers live in the community, you really can't do that statistical analysis. But what they did is they manipulated that request to fearmonger the idea that people just wanted the cities and towns that the officers live in so that they could use that as a way to track them down to their homes and do whatever. It was just a fear-mongering excuse to, strike down that public records request. And that public records request is being fought right now by the Attorney General. They're actually representing Lynn, or they're supposed to be representing Lynn, but they've been kicking the can down the road so that they can try to put a piece of legislation in at the State House to nullify the request. That's a whole nother issue. Maybe Lynn can get into that a little bit, but that's very problematic.
Jesus.
I think as far as that goes, I have never shown up at a police officer's house, but I can tell you that the FOP president in Pawtucket, James Bano, at the time, sent thugs to my house. So he's worried about police officers, us knowing what cities or towns the police officers that serve our community, what cities and towns they live in. But yet he calls people in from Massachusetts to come to my home. So, and I don't have a gun. He does.
And I got to ask.
I want to add to that and say some of these commentators on Facebook, they sit here saying, defending the police officers, right? They don't live our lives. They don't know the retaliation that goes on. So, in other words, they're actually helping the police officers target us because they make the police officers feel like they're the victims. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we are being allowed because we're being targeted. So, some of these people wonder why the police should be, watched more closely and all that, because they get away with whatever they do. In Pawtucket, you have a fire chief who can come on and harass you on Facebook. You've got an FOP who can harass you all over social media or Facebook. And at the end of the day, IA will always come up with the same result. We find that they did nothing wrong. So we shouldn't hold them to a higher standard. In Pawtucket, why should we have to respect them? They're not held to a higher standard. The respect
just for the record,
mutual.
For the record, James Bano was found in violation of policy for harassing Lynn Farinelli. They did
Well,
the investigation wasn't.
I'm talking about with my IA investigation that I originally put in for the Twitter harassment. They found him. They found him to. That he wasn't.
Yeah, they said the
right?
FOP.
But
they said the FOP Twitter page.
Yeah,
they said that wasn't part of the Pawtucket Police Department. That's ridiculous.
Pawtucket Police. Yeah, Pawtucket Police wasn't responsible.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, James Bano admitted that he took one for the team. Well, I want people to understand this, okay? If James Bano says he took one for the team, which is kind of admitting that he did something a little bit funky there, and as long as I'm targeting him, he's okay with it. Well, I'm not, because Bento find out who the team is. I'm okay. I already know Bano and what he's capable of and what he's been doing and what he's done. I'm trying to find out, and I'm puzzling together who the team was. And we're starting to find that out. I'm very disappointed to start to find out that his retaliation when he used the outside bloggers to come in and harass Lynn and I and write these bogus articles about us that most people, simple-minded people, fell for. I find it hard to believe. The IA department finds it hard to believe. State police finds it hard to believe. And I think most of these listeners are going to find it hard to believe that I asked the chief of police over and over and over again, does she have any idea who authorized James Bano to bring them people into our town to ultimately come and target the citizens? She over and over again said she did not have any idea. She does not know. Well, I have documentation that she authorized. When you have a chief of police, part of James Bano's team, along with other officers that already have retaliated against me, and I have lawsuits against right now. When you have that type of team with your superiors backing you up to come for me, we have a problem here in the city.
Where is the media?
I want to add one thing to this because it's kind of interesting. James Bano was also promoted to detective right before he retired from Pawtucket. So the city of Pawtucket is paying a little bit more, I guess, in a pension for him after he came after private citizens and with an open investigation into this harassment, retaliation, and everything. And then they promoted him, and then he moved on to East Providence. So now he can go and harass them there, I guess. And, but he was promoted after doing this.
Yeah, that was
so this is how much Chris.
So that's not the first.
Yeah, this is how much
time, Pat, right? So another officer that I've had prior issues with, And I filed a claim against, not once but twice, because he retaliated twice, and when he realized that 3 strikes you're out, that's when James Bano stepped in and retaliated on his behalf. So the claim goes through the city, and then it goes to the trust, right? So check this timeline out. My second claim had gone through the city, so it gets denied by the city, and then it goes over to the trust, right? So the day that my claim got denied by the city, at 7:30, approximately 7:30 p.m. during a council meeting, it was announced on Facebook less than 3 hours later, 10 p.m. Pat Ford, 10 p.m. on Facebook, that officer got a promotion to be a detective. See, they high five the officers that retaliate against us. They high five them. Why would you go on Facebook off hours at 10 p.m. the same day that my second claim got denied? It got denied by the city. Doesn't mean that I lost the case. It got denied by the city because it has to go now to the trust, and it's going to go to court. But why would you choose 10 p.m. on the same day that you think you won something against me to high five him and show me, hey, look what we did. We not only did he do a good job coming for you, we're going to promote him and give him detective. And guess what happened after he became that? He came for me again.
And
that's what caused the second lawsuit. These people are ridiculous.
And it would be great if we had a public safety director that was actually looking at the public safety, but our public safety director is the chief of police. So she really can't protect us when she can't even get her police department to not retaliate and go after private citizens.
Wow.
Well, when she got promoted to chief, her first meeting with the community, she said this specifically, and I remember that I answered her. She said, my job as the chief of police, and a lot of chiefs say this and they don't realize it. So pay attention if you are a chief and you said this, you might want to rethink what's coming out of your mouth. He said, my job is to make sure that every officer makes it home safely. No, honey, your job is to make sure that every citizen makes it home safely. When you come in as a chief thinking your job is to protect just officers and you're also the public safety director, we are not winning anything. We are in big trouble, my friends.
So as I was mentioning, where is and I'm not here to virtue signal against other media, but these are astonishing events that take place in a relatively small city. Where is the Pawtucket Time on this? Where's the Valley Breeze?
The Valley Breeze will undo everything we say and help the Pawtucket Police Department and the mayor make it look like we're lying. Ethan Shorey is the worst journalist I've ever seen in my life, and he knows that. Comes for me every time simply because I call him out. They will not just leave a story alone. They twist everything to make it seem like every story must be a lie. My videos went viral from an incident that happened at Slater Junior High School. I went there to go pick up my niece and my stepdaughter. And there was a big fight going on where before the bell rang, over 200 kids came running out of the building crying and screaming because supposedly there was a stabbing, supposedly, allegedly, in the building. Police officers were there, fire engines, ambulances, everything came to the building, okay? All I did was put my Facebook on live and film it. And I'm the liar. So did I orchestrate this? Did I call the school and tell the principal at this time, have all these children run out of the school and run around the building and cross streets flying because something's happening in the school? How could I possibly lie about something that I simply just went live on Facebook so everyone else can see what was happening at the school? Well, Ethan Shorey from the Valley Breeze decided to somehow help that story become a big lie. I don't understand. And people fall for it every single time. Valley Breeze is the worst. I don't even know why it even exists anymore because nothing's even accurate. Why do other medias don't pick up on it? I have no idea. The same way that I don't know why politicians don't pick up on Pawtucket being a problem in Rhode Island. Same reason why I don't understand the governor and the AG's office not picking up that there's a problem in Pawtucket. Nobody wants to pick up there's a problem in Pawtucket. I'm wondering what kind of pull Mayor Grevian has. At this point, is it the mob? I mean, what is it? It's got to be something because nobody pays attention to Pawtucket.
No, I mean, it's we show up, the media shows up once every year or two to celebrate his latest boondoggle, baseball stadium, soccer stadium. Meanwhile, no one makes a stink that the hospital's gone. No one makes a stink that the GAM is gone. No one makes a stink that, well, fill in the blanks is gone.
Well, we put out a press release and it went to multiple media outlets. The only ones that put it out, the press release went out not this last Friday, about a week and a half ago, right?
Right.
The first person that put it out was you, and the second person that put it out was Go Local. But it went out to everyone. It went out to the Valley Breeze. It went out to the Providence Journal. It went out to the Pawtucket Times. It went out to Channel 10, Channel 12, Channel 6. It went out to everybody. Nobody will touch it. Probably because the mayor says there's discrepancies and nobody wants to do their job to call them out and find out what the discrepancies are. And at the end of the day, you've asked, or local have asked, and it's pretty clear as day, he cannot back up his words at this moment.
Right.
He never has been able to, and he still can't till this day.
Well, I think we've gained a lot of information tonight. And like I said, it's a rotating cast. I realize some people can make it some week, other people can't. If there's folks that you want to invite on to engage with us, that's fine. We're going to essentially consider that 8:30 on Tuesday nights, we're going to be following up with the issues surrounding the Pawtucket Police Department until we get clarification, until we get some reasonable gains on behalf of the community. I don't know what else to do.
And
maybe you should invite.
Just because they've backed out of meeting with us and they've kind of taken our ideas that we've presented and they're trying to run with them and trying to make it look like they're making some changes instead of working with us. I just want to make it clear that last week, I believe J.O. said something about CU4PC is passing the torch to the Mayor's Advisory Board. I want to make something perfectly clear here. That is not what we are doing. That is not our intention. We are not passing no torch to no mayor-appointed community review board, regardless of who's on it. We do have some of our members that have been appointed on it. That means nothing. CU4PC will take this forward with or without the mayor, with or without the Pawtucket Police Chief. We plan on taking this to wherever it needs to go. I've made some contacts today outside of Pawtucket, state, federal, you name it. We're taking it there. We're not giving up. We're not being quiet. I'm not tired. I'm just getting started.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, again, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you to bringing words to life. Ultimately, it's not just the report. The report's critical, but it's the lived experience, the anecdotes, the reflections that amplify the report that make it all the more real to folks who are not living in Pawtucket or have had the good fortune of avoiding any interaction with the, as I like to say, the Pawtucket, Rhode Island law enforcement community. Jim, you had a suggestion before we sign off for the night as to perhaps who we should engage with?
Yeah, maybe we should invite Mayor Grevian and Chief Gonzalez.
I'd be happy to. As you all know,
send them an invitation.
I thought about, May 11th is a big day. You folks may not be aware of it, but that's allegedly the grand opening of the Worcester Woo Sox baseball stadium. I thought that I might reach out to the Don and maybe he and I go on a little road trip, kind of a bonding thing. Think Thelma and Louise in a really bad Ford Fusion. I'm not saying we're going to go off the cliff together, but
I'd like to touch on that one real quick, right?
Because yeah, sure.
Something very interesting that I read, and I know we were all together too on that whole Paw Sox thing. It was pretty interesting. Most of the time, I was the only minority in the room saying we don't really get to use McCoy Stadium. It doesn't help the diversity of Pawtucket because it only caters to certain people and everyone who had a wonderful story. None of them came from a minority community. Kids getting engaged or kids having summertime jobs. And every single hearing that I went to, I remember being the only minority in the room most of the time. And the first sentence out of my mouth would be, I know I'm going to upset a lot of people in this room, but coming from a minority community, there is no minorities in this room because we don't get anything from the Paw Sox or the McCoy Stadium, period. So why should we continue to pay taxes for something that we don't enjoy and we're not really, a part of, where we're excluded? I read something very interesting that now that the Woo Sox are at the new stadium, the owners have now decided to make it more diverse and inclusive. I mean, that's like, I had such a good day that day because it proved to me that not only are they hearing me, they're listening. People are listening. They like to ignore us and shut us up, but they're listening because now everything you did wrong here, you're going to try to get it right now over there. I mean, good luck, because I don't know how humble and honest they're being with their real feelings. We're not going to go too deep into it, but you couldn't do that here in the 40-something years that you were here. And now you're really going to do that in Woonsocket and Worcester.
Right.
Well, and that just goes to show you that the city doesn't have to work with us and they don't have to pretend like they're listening. But all the changes I'm seeing happening right now, after they're done meeting with the CU4PC and watching our Facebook to see what we're saying, changes they're making, they're definitely paying attention to us. And that's a shame, because it would be so much easier to work with us than to fight us. I'll get changed by any means necessary. If that means the mayor calling me and my team a liar, but you're changing things. Well, I can't be too much of a liar because you're going right along with what my ideas were in the first place. But what I won't do is stand here or sit here and allow him to call me a liar any longer. I think I've made myself clear to him. And if I haven't made myself clear to him in the messages I sent him this week, I'll make myself clear to him right here, right now, because I know he's watching. Donald Grevian, you have called me a liar for the last time.
Okay. We'll let that just sit there and we'll let it seep in. So we agree that we will resume the conversation next Tuesday. Start roughly around 8:30 or so, depending on the time. This is allegedly being developed like a TV network. We're not quite there yet on timeliness, as you can tell, anyone who's listened to us this evening. But, it's the beauty of this format is we don't have to interrupt the flow. Both shows tonight spoke great truths. And this isn't one of those radio stations or TV where you get a minute and a half, then you got 5 commercials, then you got a host, and then you get a minute, and then you got to go home. No one's ever going to mistake this place for that. So we thank you all for joining us. From the bottom of my heart to the folks of Pawtucket, thank you again for investing in this conversation. And we will see you next Tuesday. But somehow I think you'll hear from us before then. This video will be shared with a post at some point tonight or tomorrow. And you'll all have an opportunity to pick it apart and listen and think about it and dwell on it. And if you're in the city of Pawtucket, or if you're in the city of Providence, or if you're in the city of Central Falls, or if you're in the town of Cumberland, regardless of where you live, there are universal truths here that need to be addressed. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And again, if you could take a moment and like us or subscribe to us or share to us, or God forbid, listen to our TikTok, we would be grateful. You'll see all the links on our website. Folks, have a wonderful evening, And we'll be right back at you tomorrow night. 7 o'clock, Ramp, Real Access Motivates Progress. Tina Peterson, an award-winning show that brings to light all sorts of products and skills and analysis and legal support for folks who are facing physical challenges, and how someone as powerful as Tina and her personality can literally change your perspective on your life. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Christine. Night, Lynn.
Thank you all. Thank you again, Pat. We salute you, man. You're doing a great job. I'm signing off. Is that okay?